Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Emerging Pod, where we get emerging people into emerging careers. Today's guest is Luchele Mendes. Luchele has an extensive experience in recruitment across Europe, ranging from the pharmaceutical and medical sectors in data science. She is now a principal consultant at Trust in Soda, where she specializes in NLP and MLOps talents for startups leveraging NLP as their core technology. Luchele is also a podcast host, and she's passionate about using her voice and network to help diverse communities break into tech. Luchele, good to have you with us.
Thank you for inviting me. Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for your time. We were looking over your background and we thought it was quite interesting. You studied psychology at university. What made you choose psychology? What was the reason?
Do you know what? It was honestly nothing fancy. There was no special dream of mine to become a psychologist or anything like that. I initially wanted to study English literature because one thing that I absolutely love is reading books. I've always read, right from when I was a very, very young girl. And so obviously being in literature, I thought I would be able to maximize my opportunity to read as much as possible. But I was like, but be realistic, you might not get a job if you did literature. So I decided that I wanted to study economics instead. And so I applied to Loughborough, I applied to Warwick. My best friend was at Warwick, so I wanted to go to Warwick. And so I applied, but unfortunately I couldn't get in. I didn't get in any of my chosen universities, Warwick, Loughborough. I think I needed 2 A's and a B, and I got 1 A, 2 B's, and 2 C's, which even then wasn't kind of enough to get in there. So I actually ended up finding psychology in clearing in the Times University website back in the day. I don't know whether you know anything, but in the UK, if you don't get into your preferred university choice, you are able to get in through something called a clearing. And it's basically a list of all the universities that have open courses for people who can get in, essentially. Mm-hmm. And so Royal Holloway was the best university out of all the universities that I found that actually did psychology. It was at that point, the fourth best university in the UK for psychology. So I was like, great, and they were like, what do you know about psychology? Are you interested in learning? I was like, no, I made something up. I don't even know. The other subject was anthropology or something like that, something very vague at Sheffield University, which is also a very good university in the UK. So literally, Royal Holloway was my choice because of how good the university was more than the actual course itself. But when I did study psychology, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so me. This is exactly, what I am consumed with. I'm consumed to find out and know the human nature. And that's what this course enabled me to do, is to gain me an access to the human mind. And what exactly is the human mind? Does it have its origins in the brain, in the physical structures of the brain, which led me to study more of the neuroscience aspects, learning about neurotransmitters. And interestingly, this was back in 2012. I actually did my thesis, my dissertation on psychedelic drugs, which is only just now surfacing as one of the cures or, solutions for depression. And I had done that all that while back in 2012 because my then housemate and now fiance told me about DMT and ayahuasca. And he was like, there is a molecule in your brain that corresponds to DMT, which is released upon birth and death. And that's the big, hypothesis. Does that actually exist? And I went to prove him wrong that it doesn't exist. So it opened me into this new world of a rabbit hole of kind of mystery. But other than that, it was completely accidental.
Doesn't DMT, that's dimethyltryptamine, right? Doesn't that get released during sleep as well?
Interesting. I honestly don't. I'm not a scientist. I mean, I try to find, there's very, very little research actually being done in this space, because it is, even if it is released, it's released in such minuscule amount that we actually don't have measuring devices that are sensitive enough to actually measure it. So we can't actually conclude whether it actually happens or not.
That's really interesting. So about the dissertation, how did you study psychedelics and their impact?
It was the interest, and the research was purely academic. It was all about researching as many papers as I possibly could find. At that point, not many. Like, there's a lot of research happening in the 60s, because that's when, they were kind of legal, and before all the Timothy Leary scandal that happened and they went underground, there was a lot of literature coming out from the 60s, 70s, but early years, not so much. I mean, there is a revival now, and there are notable names like Robin Carhart Harris. But now I feel like the research is going more down towards the pharmaceutical route, which I personally don't agree with so much, because I don't think these chemicals or these molecules need to be separated from either the mushroom or wherever actually it belongs. I don't believe in synthetic psychedelics at all. But that's my personal opinion.
That's really interesting. So then after that, armed with the knowledge of the potential for psychedelics, how did you transition into your first role?
Again, for me, there were two aspects of my life. One, that loved to study. I wanted to go into a PhD. That would have been my dream, to study a PhD. But in England, without like proper scholarships, or without somebody paying you or finding, information like masters, you had to finish a master's, and that was like 12 grand. I didn't have that kind of money to do anything with that, right? So I decided, let me go into work. And I found a job as a legal secretary. And then I found out about recruitment. Again, I completely fell into it. There was a possibility of making money. It's very much a sales job. If anyone says anything else, if you're not a good salesperson, you won't be able to survive in this role. You have to be a good salesperson in getting business. You have to be a good salesperson in selling a job to a candidate, and finding the right match between the candidate and the client, coming together in perfect harmony for it to work. So there's so many different aspects of myself that I was able to test out. Like, for example, being good at marketing, being able to write good content, being able to interview and talk to people, being able to understand how someone's behavior works, what goes on into their mind. So it was basically like putting my psychology bachelor's into action, actually, interacting with people. And I have met the most amazing people through this journey, honestly, like the best people, CEOs of these amazing companies. I've traveled to Switzerland, to Netherlands, to Belgium, to Ibiza, to Barcelona. Literally, I've been so many cool places. Like, I would never have dreamt that this was possible at the beginning stages of my career. But yeah, it's been amazing. Even though this may not have been my preferred path, it has turned out really, really good. And now I have my podcast. I'm doing NLP. I'm talking to people who are building this Chat GPT-3, like my dream.
How does a career in recruitment take you to Ibiza? I'm very, very curious.
By being really good at what I did.
What were they recruiting for in Ibiza?
So I'll tell you what it does. Okay, so like, as I said, this job is a sales job. And at the moment, we are going through a very, very tough market. Tech, I don't know whether you know, well, you must do, because you work in tech, right? There's the biggest kind of layoffs anyone has ever announced. And I can only equate it to like 2008 crash, maybe, because I didn't experience that type of like downward slope until now. This is the first time in my career, I've been in the industry for 7 years, that I've actually seen something take such a bad hit in terms of recruitment. And so like, it's really testing you as a recruiter and as a person, like how much will you persevere? How much will you kind of keep pushing to the very edges of what is possible? And that is basically what it's allowing me to do. It's allowing me to really kind of switch gears into like performance mode, which is great, because you're just like, and you're no longer motivated by goals. You're no longer motivated by actually hitting your goals, but you are now being motivated by doing the process, doing what needs to be done every day, just doing it for the sake of doing it, rather than thinking, oh, this is going to result into something, but just feeling high with accomplishing the tasks that you set yourself out to do that day. So I don't know what the question was, but essentially, I have been able to do this consistently throughout my career, adapt to the needs, So I really wanted to go to Ibiza, and they wanted, they had there were a few things that you needed to accomplish. Like you had to, have, I don't know, a certain amount of billings, for example, in that 6 months. And if you accomplish that, you would be able to get a 5-star trip to Ibiza with your friends. And it was great. And so that was when I experienced that. So yeah, just being good at what I do, adapting to, the goals of the company, the market, and pushing yourself to do the best you can.
It seems you're very much achievement oriented, which makes perfect sense. You'd be very good at your job. You mentioned that we're kind of experiencing some of the toughest times that you've seen so far. Can you talk a bit about that? Like, what have you seen specifically? There's been big companies that, like Amazon, Facebook, etc., that have laid off tens of thousands of people in the US. They're starting to do similar things in the UK as well. Are there any specific numbers or metrics that you can point to?
I can't specifically point to metrics, but I can tell you that it is not just restricted to Microsoft and Apple. It's not just big tech that is suffering. I have had number of clients in Germany who can no longer operate, and they are startups. They've run out of money. Their customers have stopped paying. They don't have any projects coming in. So many businesses in Germany, less than 100 people, are having to let their people go. So many people across Germany are having to let their people go. There's hiring freezes as well. It's not just that they're letting people go, but they're not actually bringing anyone in. So everybody is like a bit on standstill at the moment. We don't know which way the market is going to go. But there is small shimmers of excitement, like with ChatGPT-3. I think me being in the NLP market is like the best thing I could have done for my career. I have no idea how I found NLP, but I did. And NLP is one of the markets that's actually doing really, really well. AI, generative AI in general, is doing really well. Automation is doing very well. Anything that involves kind of transformer models or deep learning, large language models, machine learning, that sector is doing very, very well. And we're seeing a huge demand for MLOps and machine learning engineers who can actually build things and ship them fast so that people will start spending money, because at the moment, no one is spending money. That's the problem.
Are there any specific types of companies that are struggling? Because you mentioned smaller German startups. Are there any specific sectors that are really struggling? I'm just curious to see if there are any trends in there.
I'll tell you what sector is not struggling at the moment, rather than the financial industry is doing amazing. I don't know how. Financial accounting, banking. So Trinovo, the company that I work for, is Trinovo is like the parent company, the holding company. And within the company, there are 3 other companies called BioTalent, Trust in Soda, and Broadgate. And Broadgate is the one that specializes in finance and accounting and banking and all of that. And they're doing extremely well. So it's nice to be supported by different types of businesses around us so we can see different industries and how they're doing. But yeah, the finance industry is doing really, really well.
Nice. That's quite interesting, actually. Especially coming out of COVID, it was understandable to see like the tech companies that have been overvalued kind of shift gear. And yeah, it's you have a good point. I think it's quite interesting how ChatGPT and the release that OpenAI made actually can impact the recruitment in the sector, even though the current economic trend are going against it. You mentioned you were talking about the process earlier, going in day out, especially in the current market. What does your day look like as a principal consultant?
Yeah, absolutely. So each day varies depending on what day it is. So I set my week out about what the accomplishments I need to achieve. And I go about breaking those accomplishments down into tasks and what are the tasks I need to do each day to get closer to reaching my accomplishment, right? So on Mondays, I take the podcasting very, very seriously. So I've dedicated Mondays for podcasting, actually. So I will plan my podcasts. I will do the recordings, the intros and exits. And then I will do business development relating to the podcast. So I'll reach out people who I may be interested in converting to my clients, or actually meeting and asking them what their business is all about. How do they get to do what they're doing? Just getting excited about their lives, essentially. And in a way, building their brands as well. So that's what I do. I essentially take their business and talk to the world about their business. And that's what the podcast is all about. So I build that list, and then I speak to people, and then I record people. And that's what I do on Mondays. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, I'm a recruitment consultant. So like fully fledged person. I break my day into in the mornings, I'm the most active. So I devote that to the most difficult of tasks and the most exhausting of tasks, which is the business development aspect. So lead generation, calling, emailing, meeting people, organizing meetups, all that kind of doing meetings and things like that. And then the next half of the day is to do candidate sourcing, is to find candidates and to speak with them. And that's what I repeat. And I interview people as well. So, it's balanced that way, in kind of client focused and candidate focused throughout the days. But yeah.
That's interesting. And when you interview candidates, so you didn't start with data science. Initially, you were in the biomedical sector. Is that correct?
Yeah. So even in the I started my recruitment career in pharmaceutical industry, and even in the pharmaceutical industry, I was doing bioinformatics and data science. So I have been doing data science now for a very, very long time. I've seen it applied to different scenarios. I've seen it applied to the pharmaceutical scenario, medical device scenario, drug development scenario, drug discovery scenario. I've seen PROTACs. There are these protein type of drugs that are being created at the moment, which is really cool. And now, obviously, I'm into the AI space. So,
and how do you train yourself from your perspective as a recruitment to be able to identify a good candidate, especially in a new technical field that might be foreign to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really, really good question to ask, and one that takes years to master. Like, even I think it's only now that even then, there's so many things. People are people, right? When you meet them for 30 minutes, is that enough to like gauge your idea about who they are, what they like, what they're motivated by, what are they passionate about? So you try, as a recruiter, you try as much as possible to make your time efficient by gathering this information to understand somebody's motivations, like more than finding whether somebody is good at what they're claiming to do. You need to kind of understand who this person is, like what are they motivated by, what are their intentions, what do they want to achieve, what would make them happy. And even if they may not be the right person for the job, it doesn't mean that you now discard them. You just understand them and you try and see if you can help them find and improve their life in a way. So I don't think there is such a thing as a bad candidate. I think every single person that I have ever met has always taught me something, has always inspired me. And it's just trying to find out how I can be of service to them rather than, the other way around, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in terms of talking about diversity in tech, what have you seen from diverse candidates coming in? What are the key barriers for them from your perspective?
Very good question as well. I think the world is going down the route of accepting diversity. When I first started my career, there was no such thing. And I might be bad mouthing the markets that I worked in, but Switzerland particularly would, like some of the banks that we worked with, would particularly say we do not want brown or black people in our companies. Like that was no hiding it. This was back in the day. This was like 2000 and say 16, 17 type of time. Okay. Wow. Which was shocking, right? But then since COVID happened, like things have really, really changed. And a lot of us are embracing diversity. And it's so nice to see, even though I feel like, now it's all going down the route of quotas and we need to have a 50-50 split between diverse. I mean, I don't think that is quite necessary because more than anything, you need to have like diversity of thought. So if you just hire people from the same university, whether they are black, brown, or whatever, they will still be trained to think in the same way. You need to really find diversity, as in go to different geographies, maybe have more remote teams, maybe have different categories of people, not necessarily, like, for example, in AI, I really want to see more kind of philosophers, more, humanistic people, more legal people, more environmentalists, for example, coming together to create something, because I don't think that we can work in silos anymore. We need to bring diverse type of thinking, and which eliminates gender and, coloring and anything like that, because that is, no one can help that. Do you know what I mean? You can't help that you're a brown person. That doesn't mean that you're automatically like the greatest person to have ever lived, but you need to really cultivate a different sort of thinking, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say to some people make the claim that there's also a challenge in terms of applications that you receive? There's not necessarily that many diverse talent that is applying to this job.
So I think people really need to make it a point that they are welcoming diversity. So a lot of times women will not apply to male sounding job descriptions. And just look at the job description. Like, what kind of words are you using? Are you talking about maternity leave? Are you talking about, parental support? Are you talking about there's a crash available? Are you talking about flexible hours? Are you talking about we are enabling you to balance your life, family life, and working life? If people are not talking about these things, women are not going to apply.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense, actually. And yeah, it's. I think I've seen this an article about something similar, a similar topic, where even the words, the way you describe the key skills or the key characteristic you're looking in an individual, can be skewed towards that can make men or women filter themselves out of a role.
Absolutely.
Going back to the podcast, so you mentioned you also use it as a way to meet with potential customers. How did the idea of the podcast come about?
So my manager and one of the most brilliant mentors and recruiters and all-round leaders I have ever met was a guy, or is a guy, called Anthony Kelly. So I met Anthony when I actually used to work for BioTalent, our pharmaceutical wing of Trenovo, before I moved to Soda. And I met Anthony Kelly when I was working at the BioTalent wing of our group. And I was immediately captivated by him. You know, he was just this amazing, like he was like, okay, book a slot in my calendar to meet me, and he had like a 15-minute slot. And I was like, wow, this guy doesn't want to waste his time, you know. And I was like, I have so much respect for you. So I booked a 15-minute slot to speak with him, and I found out that that's what he does. He is a podcast host and he is an event organizer. And he spoke to me about how many people he was able to convert who came to his events or who came to his podcasts. So when I actually joined Soda, I was so grateful that he actually picked me to come and join him on his team. So he was my he is my manager now, and so I get to learn from him directly. But yeah, right from the start, I noticed that when I would go into business development calls with him, the people would be like, oh, actually, I found you, Anthony, through your event that you organized in Berlin. That's how we're talking about really passionate. So I was like, wow, cool. So it's a great way to like portray to the world what you are doing, you know, share your story, talk to people, invite people onto your show. And if they really like that interaction, it gives them a free opportunity to understand how you could potentially work together, right? And so that's basically what has been my kind of finding. But now I'm really actively utilizing that in my business development calls. So I will actually say like this, you know, I am primarily a recruitment consultant, and I'm doing this podcast to be able to meet and grow my network. And so if you are in need of accessing a large, multinational, diverse machine learning community, come onto my podcast. Let's talk. You'll get to meet my community. You'll get your message shared for free to a really engaged community. And so that's what they're able to do. They're able to really share their brand, their vision to an amazing audience. And in return, if they really, really like to what they're seeing, I'm able to work with them. And I have converted so many clients as a result of this, you know, people who may not necessarily have even wanted to work with a recruiter in the beginning. They may have just been using their own HR or their own kind of LinkedIn adverts, for example, to source candidates. And then they felt like, wait, if we can find somebody or we know somebody who can passionately talk about our business to the market, then why not? And that's basically what I do. I just passionately talk about who they are, because I won't invite anybody who I'm not inspired by on my podcast.
Nice. Yeah, that's absolutely true. When you reach out to people and you just ask them to jump on your podcast, most of them will say yes. Is there a particular conversation that stuck with you or one that's your favorite?
I love this question as well. Oh my gosh, that's very, very difficult to say. I'm about to release an amazing podcast, and it's about a CTO who is passionate about endurance running, long distance running. And he's talking about this time when he's out in the forest and he's running in the dark for hours, for 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours. And he's completely alone with himself and his thoughts. And he like goes beyond his mind, and he can see that there is an endless horizon, and he can see that there is no limits to a human potential. And I'm giving it all away. You've got to listen to it. It's such an inspiring podcast.
That sounds really interesting. You also had a couple of guests where you spoke about psychedelics. So you went back to your roots. Anything interesting you'd like to share from those?
Okay, so psychedelics, yes, very, very interesting conversations. One was with Delix. So I invited Sam, who is the CEO of Delix, and he's such an inspiring guy, so passionate about what he does. He's very methodical and very kind of headstrong, and he's very much in the scientific methods of, bringing the psychedelics onto the market. And so he has created this app that will help users who are using microdosing to basically create a treatment plan for themselves, monitor their symptoms, and see how they are progressing in their depression or any other type of mental illness that they're suffering, or even performance oriented. Lots of people microdose for performance these days. So that app is really cool. So check it out. It's Delix. The second one is the CEO co-founder of oh my gosh, my mind has gone completely blank right now. But his name is Dmitry Akovrod. And he has created this retreat for leaders, for CEOs, for change makers, for people who want to kind of, impact society in a positive way. And so he uses psychedelics to really inspire leadership into people, which is also very cool. And the conversation with him was amazing. Like, he's so well read. He himself, he's a PhD. He has been in the data world for a long, long time. And then he encountered ayahuasca, and the rest is history. And he really goes into our relationship to the earth, to our environment, and how that has been broken, and how we need to come back together, to heal collectively. Such an inspiring podcast as well.
That's awesome. We'll definitely link the 2 episodes in the show notes.
Amazing.
You help organizations find the best people in NLP, MLOps, etc. How have you seen the space evolve since you've started working in data science? How do jobs evolve? Initially there was a lot of ambiguity because the field is still quite nascent, but are now teams becoming a bit more industrialized, where they're more structured? They have early career people, mid-level, senior people. How have you seen the evolution of jobs in the space?
Very, very interesting question as well. So I haven't been that long in the NLP space, so I can't really speak too much into the machine learning space and the evolution of it, but I can generally talk about the data science space and how that has evolved. Mm-hmm. So machine learning is a very, very kind of recent, development. I think 2017 was when the first transformer paper came out. Attention is all you need, which is such a cool paper. Mm-hmm. And so that brought to people's attention, no pun intended, but brought to people's attention the propensity, the power of transformers. Like ChatGPT 2022 Transformers has been happening for a long time. Lots of people are using Transformers already. ChatGPT is nothing new to these people. ChatGPT has just been on a large global scale. Everybody is now involved in it. But before that, since 2017, this transformer architecture has already been generating really cool stuff. I worked with a company called Oxolo in Germany, which basically uses generative AI to create avatars that can speak to you in real time, which is really cool. So that and then I did another one, which a company called Lilt. I was helping them to build their research teams, and they use transformers and they use generative AI to convert to convert French into German or German into Korean in real time using transformers. And there was another company in California that I was assisting that changed accents in real time using transformer models. So really, really cool stuff has been happening for a very long time. But I'll tell you what's happening now, though. These people are like, okay, we can't be in research phase anymore because investors are not just eager to invest in just research concepts. We've got to put these things out onto production. We've got to produce them. We've got to make these into models, make these models into products, which is now where a lot of engineers are demanded, which is where we're seeing MLOps skills go up. We're really looking for MLOps people, but there is a skill gap. There's lots of researchers who can make a model a reality, but we cannot yet make them into products, which is where we need lots and lots of engineers to be able to scale at a very, very fast pace. And that's what is now going to be very interesting to see the next generation of AI coming to surface.
That's super interesting. And where do you usually go to find qualified people? How do you assess their technical skills?
So I use LinkedIn. My adverts are very good. I get very good incoming candidates. I have built my market from ground up to about 10,000 people now. So those people share my message to their network, and I get really good people coming back to my messages, to my adverts. When I'm not able to, I go on GitHub or I go on Kaggle competitions and I try and find people that way. People who are really inspired and who love to code, who love to just build something for the sake of it, like true engineers at heart. That's the type of people I find then on GitHub or Kaggle.
Nice. That makes sense. You also gave us a bit of an overview into your role and your day-to-day. How does that look like? Have you started incorporating generative AI into your daily routines?
Okay, truth be told, right? I actually don't like AI. I don't like technology. I'm very much an earth person. I like being in the forest, like being as far away removed from my mind as possible and being in my body. So no, I tried using ChatGPT and I got really annoyed because I was like, it sounds generic. It sounds the same. It's not smart. It's really annoying me. I've stopped using it. I'm not doing it, but no, you won't find me using generative AI.
That's interesting. Do you think other people around you that will start using it might get a bit of a leg up?
I think if you are not that equipped with intellect, and if you're not that, so like somebody recently said, like people who are the most impressed with ChatGPT are people who may not already possess that volume of information or knowledge, right? They may not. So they may actually need to ask Google for so many things. People who are well read or people who are well educated don't actually find the technology that smart. In fact, you can find a lot of errors in the way that they are that it is expressing itself. So I think if we rely too much on ChatGPT-3, we might welcome a whole host of very average people who are not really putting in any effort to develop themselves, to read, to educate themselves, but who are just relying on the technology to tell them what to do. So therefore we are, and that is one thing that we don't want to. We don't want to go down that route. We as humans need to reclaim intelligence and actually make it our responsibility to educate ourselves, because I actually think that Matrix could happen.
Oh, in what sense?
AI is so intelligent. The AI is if you are able to kind of really put things in the right manner, which you can build self-thinking, self-governing, self-sustaining systems. And so it is our responsibility as a human that we also need to keep up or develop ourselves as our technology advances, because we as humans, we don't want to be left behind. And I don't believe the answers are by putting an injection in your brain and downloading the information in your brain. Do you know what I mean? Like how Elon Musk is suggesting. I think that's bullshit. Sorry. But actually like using what you already have and developing it really, really to that level.
Yeah, I think definitely what you said around using ChatGPT, for example, to enhance you as a human. I've heard a lot about how it's actually more useful. ChatGPT and other GitHub Copilot, these AIs to generate code, are way more useful for actually senior developers because they can read code and understand it very quickly, and they can really make use of it to iterate and really increase their output. And it's definitely true that I can relate to that, where if you ask ChatGPT about something that you don't know about, it's very impressive. You're very easily impressed. And I've also tried some hacks actually to make it sound less generic. You can try to literally put in your prompt, sound quirky or try to be funny. There's things like that. So you can get some interesting result with that. Is there, I guess, if you were to pick somewhere where you would use AI and it could be related to how you like to be connected with the earth, what would it be? What would it look like?
Techno. I don't know. Honestly, for me, anything that relies so heavily on the Earth's resources to a point that it is happy to deplete it to make it run is a system I can't get behind. ChatGPT 3, it uses as much energy as it takes for a small country to be powered. And that is exhaustive on a planet that is already being depleted of the energy sources. Here we are, in the region of COP27, trying to mitigate climate change situation. And at the same time, AI is advancing without actually thinking, how can we make it more efficient? I will get behind this technology when we're starting to make it more efficient, where we're starting to think about the energy that it takes to consume it. And, there is something called quantization and network pruning, basically making machine learning, deep learning models optimized so that they are running efficiently. Because if you think about the brain, machine learning and neural networks are modeled on the brain. So the brain, for example, is the architecture that they're using, that there are all these different nodes of neurotransmitters and they work together to communicate with each other through the synapses. And basically, deep learning is also is mimicking the brain, but the brain is so efficient because it doesn't consume as much energy as much as AI does. So how can we make AI more energy efficient? And once that happens, that's when I'm going to start getting excited, because we're really, really far away from that. But yeah, if we bring on that challenge, right? Like we're living in this state in this crisis time where temperatures are soaring. There's wildfires. I've never even heard of wildfires growing up, but now every year there's wildfires happening around my area. So we need to look at how we can build our systems that contribute to the earth, to give back to the earth and to heal the earth in a way rather than depleting it.
That's a very good
100%.
point. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think there is a concern. I know, for example, Hugging Face, one of their sort of core values is building sustainable AI, artificial intelligence. And I think that's one of the reason things like ChatGPT in a way are useful, because it avoids at least having 3 different companies training a ChatGPT. It's just one, and then everyone else can build on top of it. But there's definitely way more work to do to really make it efficient.
I think so.
What would you advise? What would your advice be for an early career data scientist or someone that's getting into uni to study data science?
Okay, to study data science, I would say don't study data science, study mathematics instead. study mathematics, study software engineering, study statistics, because more and more I see the demand. So if somebody is really passionate about data science, employers are actually not really that concerned about what they have maybe studied in, but if they were to be concerned about what they're studying in, they would ask for degrees in maths, degrees in stats, degrees in physics, rather than a degree in data science, because I think data science might just give you a very narrow view of what you need to see in how maths comes into place. And I think maths, for a machine learning engineer really, really passionate about machine learning, if you don't have that mathematical type of mind, it's very, very difficult to actually get a more algorithm to work. There's so much maths involved in that. So I would say think about it carefully. If you really want to go into data science and you don't really know what data science is, then there might be a bit of a gap in knowledge that you may need to later seek when you're finding a new employment. And at that point, people are very reluctant to give you entry-level positions or opportunities, because you may not have that fundamental gap, which is that maths knowledge, which is tested again and again every time you go into an interview process. An interview process to get into tech is very, very difficult. You have a very, very long assessment that you usually need to go through, either through an online test, like in-person test, or through a take-home assessment. And there they really, really test your knowledge. And if you demonstrate that you have knowledge in your gaps, so whether this can be through mathematics or actually understanding how an algorithm works, it's very difficult to move into then into an employment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thanks very much for your time, Luchele. I think is there anything else? I guess actually, is there anything you'd like to talk about or to promote?
No, but it's been fascinating. Thank you. I've never been on the other side of this conversation. I don't know how I did, but I hope whatever, if anything I have shared is of use to people, then, great. And if they need to kind of reach out and speak about any specific types of topics, I welcome conversations. I love intellectual conversations, so I don't shy away from that. So come on and we'll have a discussion.
Awesome. We'll add the link to your LinkedIn profile and the link to the podcast in the show notes.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for your time, Luchele.